Hi, I'm Tenessa Audette, and welcome to Tenessa Talks. On this episode, I am speaking to Assemblymember Carl Demaio. He is doing a lot of the work that you were hoping that electeds would do, and we're going to get into a lot of it. So, hope you enjoy the show. Make sure you like, follow, subscribe, and give us a 5-star review. Hi, everybody. So I'm here with Carl Demaio. Thank you so much for being here, Carl.
Tenessa, thanks so much for having me on. I'm pleased to be with you.
So for my audience, will you tell us a little bit about yourself? I know there's nothing little about your life, but maybe just early days. You do have quite an amazing story and journey, and we'll probably touch on a little bit of, but tell us about your early days.
Sure. Well, now I'm a California State Assembly member representing a district in San Diego County, the Assembly District 75, which is in the eastern and northern portions of San Diego County. And my journey into politics, really started, I guess, when I was younger. It really kind of answers the question, why are you willing to stay and fight? And how can you tolerate so much BS from a broken and corrupt political system? I grew up in Orange County, California, in Huntington Beach. And very early on, when I was like in second grade, my mother was diagnosed with terminal cancer. We had a very dysfunctional family. My father was very abusive. And when my mother was diagnosed, she was given 6 months to live. And she turned that into 6.5 years. Very difficult fight for her. But she had an interesting sense of humor. She said, I can't die because I can't leave my children with their father, because she knew that our father was not suitable. He would not be able to take care of us. And so what drove her was her love of her children. And it was horrific. I mean, back then, cancer was hard to beat. It was a death sentence. And so growing up, I remember going to chemotherapy with my mom. She tried making things as normal as possible, but it certainly was a very chaotic childhood. And my mother passed away, but my father left the family, abandoned our family 2 weeks beforehand in a domestic violence incident. And my mother had to get a restraining order on her way to the hospital.
Wow.
But she died 2 weeks later. And my brother, sister, and I were pretty much on our own. Child Protective Services didn't even know that we were living in a house without parents for 6 weeks. And ultimately, we were broken up, the 3 kids. And my sister was of age, so she lived out of her car for several months and couch surfed, pregnant. She had become pregnant right after my mother passed away. And ultimately, she found a place and went to nursing school. My brother was sent to Iowa to live with my grandparents because my grandparents offered to take in one of the 3 children. And I was sent to boarding school with the Jesuits in Rockville, Maryland,
Wow.
a place called Georgetown Prep, which has now produced 2 Supreme Court justices, Neil Gorsuch and Brett Kavanaugh, both from Georgetown Prep. And the Jesuits were marvelous. They were wonderful for me. They gave me a stable environment, a great Jesuit education. And, Jesuits are known, I think, mistakenly as being, people on the left. Jesuits ultimately are for social justice. But really, they're about fighting for what's right, and standing on principle. And that really was ingrained in me early on. So it was my mother's fight against cancer, in a difficult situation, having to grow up pretty early, being pretty much abandoned or orphaned at a young age. And then the Jesuits' generosity and their discipline and methodology for social justice that really kind of formed me as an individual. I went to Georgetown University after boarding school. got a full scholarship, but I could only be, I only had enough money scholarship wise to do 3 years out of the 4-year degree. And so I had to take extra classes to get it done earlier. And in the meantime, I had to get a full-time job. So I started working in 1993, started working for a guy named Newt Gingrich through a group called the Congressional Institute, which is an outside political group. And we started working on something called the Planning and Learning Initiative, which eventually produced the Contract with America in 1994. And so I was in the right place at the right time, I guess. And when the majority switched over, I had a full-time job while still going to college with an extra course load. So I worked on the Hill for 5 years and ultimately left in 1999, in May of 1999, to form my own company. I started my own company by maxing out some of my credit cards, and the company started seminars and training programs on how to improve government efficiency. So if you think about Doge, we were Doging government back in 1999, 2000, 2001, in with a group called the Performance Institute. And it was about holding government accountable and having measurements of government programs, audits, accountability standards, and then taking private sector business management practices and trying to translate them into a government setting to improve government. When people think, well, you're anti-government, look, I don't want government to be in a role that it shouldn't be in infringing on our freedoms. But if it has to do a role like securing the border or, defending the homeland or building a road, I want it to be as well managed as possible. So Performance Institute grew very quickly. And soon we were the largest good government group, institute, private think tank in the country. I started a second company in 2003, which did the same for the nonprofit sector and business groups, and sold both in 2007. When I sold my companies, it, it was a huge blessing. We did very well. I didn't need a job. And so that's when I decided to turn my full efforts to public service. And having made my money in business early on, selling 2 companies, it gives me financial independence. I've put my own money into my political endeavors, never taken a paycheck from my political endeavors, and it really has allowed me some independence to fund my own campaigns when necessary, or to fund a ballot measure campaign when I think it's needed to give startup costs for the effort. So I did take a seat on the San Diego City Council in 2008 when it was on the brink of bankruptcy. The city was financially in a major crisis, and they were predicting bankruptcy. There were all sorts of SEC and FBI investigations. Ultimately, previous city leaders were convicted and charged with securities fraud for falsifying the city's financial statements. So as a city council member, I came in to have to clean up that mess. And I did that through my work on our city audit committee, and then ultimately authored the recovery plan, the roadmap to recovery, which balanced the city's budget without tax increases and without service cuts. From there, I started our outside political group, at the time, Reform San Diego, to do outside pressure on government. But that has now morphed into Reform California. And we work across the state of California to try to shine a light on government, to empower activists to get involved in public service, and to engage in politics. And so this movement has grown. I never anticipated it would be this big. Every day it gets bigger. And now I'm in the state legislature because I think that we have to be inside the belly of the beast as well as outside with Reform California. And so far in the first 7 months of that experiment, things have worked out quite well. We've been really pushing to get a more aggressive Republican opposition party in Sacramento, and that's working. And we're also hoping to flip seats and put reform on the ballot with the voter ID initiative that I've authored being our top priority. So that's like drinking from a fire hydrant. That's kind of bringing us up to speed for where we are today.
So important, though. I think that especially on the right, we want to know the people that are leading, and we want to know what they're made of, because courage is probably the biggest thing that we need from our elected officials, and it is in short supply. And so hearing just the struggle that you went through and the journey that you've been on, I know it gives me confidence that a little bit of opposition isn't going to deter you from moving forward and doing the thing that needs to be done. And it seems like, I talk about who are our leaders in government, who's there, that if for some reason it shifted and we did have a bunch of Republicans, who could actually lead all of us? Because it's a diverse group. And I routinely know from your background that you're one of those people. And so I think it's important for those of us that are sort of in this industry to point to the people that have done it, that are doing it, and have the backbone and the courage to stand up when nobody's going to stand with them. And you're one of those people. And so I just think it's never not a great idea to again remind people where you've come from, what you've had to overcome, and what you're fighting for. So I'm really grateful that you're here and that you've shared all that with us. So you are in the belly of the beast. So I do want to get into voter ID, and I do want to talk about the gerrymandering that they are again trying to institutionalize in California. And then I do want to get back to sort of what we should be anticipating as a party and what we should be expecting of our leaders. So let's start with voter ID, because I think that is super important. It's an issue that 68% of Californians agree with. Obviously, the super majority of Republicans, but also a majority of Democrats also want fair elections, and they want to know that it's citizens in California that are voting. So tell us a little bit about, is there anything that you think is going to prevent that from getting on the ballot and winning?
Sure. So voter ID is not a partisan issue. It's simply about fair elections. It's about restoring the trust and confidence that all California voters, whether they're Democrat, Republican, or in between, should have in how our elections are conducted. And so we've spent a lot of time analyzing what's wrong with our elections, what leads to potential for fraud, what is of concern to voters when they see the election play out, what are they worried about, and basically what we're hearing from the voters overwhelmingly, they're worried about the very things that do produce the potential for fraud. Number one, they know that our voter rolls are outdated because they're getting the ballots at their homes. So
Right.
about 9.6%, according to an independent audit, 9.6% of people on the voter rolls in California are erroneous. They're ineligible, mainly because they have fled the state of California. A lot of people have moved out, but the the state has not cleaned or maintained its voter rolls. We also have documented examples of illegal immigrants on the voter rolls. So when people get orphan ballots at their home, it undermines their confidence because they're saying, well, hold on a second. If I'm getting a ballot for someone who left 5 years ago, 7 years ago, how many other people on my block are getting ballots for people who no longer are here and shouldn't be getting a ballot in the first place? And so we have to do a better job of eligibility review and voter list maintenance and citizenship verification. So the first thing our initiative does, it requires that we verify the citizenship of people on the voter rolls and keep accurate voter rolls. The second thing we want to make sure is that when people return a ballot, that we verify their identity. And so we would do voter ID, either in-person voter ID, show an ID, or mail-in ballots. I don't particularly like mail-in ballots, but hey, California voters do. It's a convenience, and we're
Right.
not going to do anything to change that convenience. We don't want to make it harder to vote. We want to make it actually easier and
Yeah.
simpler to vote. And so the mail-in ballots would still allow for an ID by using the last four digits of a government document of your choice. And so voters would just simply say, I want my driver's license or my passport, or I want a free voter card, my social security number. They can choose one of seven forms of government ID, whatever they're comfortable with. But once they choose that form of ID, then they would use the last four digits on their ballot to return and verify their identity. This is super simple. And that's why, as you mentioned, 68% of Californians are going to vote yes. What's the challenge? We need to get the initiative on the ballot, which means we need to collect 1 million signatures immediately. We have no room to spare, no time. It's actually running out. So if people are interested, I will mail them the petition if they go to the website voteridpetition.org. Voteridpetition.org. Sign up, and then we will pay the postage to mail you your petition. Look in your mailbox around October 1st. That's when we're going to be cleared to be able to send out the petitions. But voteridpetition.org gets you a petition that you can sign, get a couple friends in your network to sign as well. If you're interested in volunteering, please go to the website voteridvolunteer.org, voteridvolunteer.org. And I am going to be up in your area. I know that you have a lot of folks who are in Redding and Yuba County. So we're going to be, if you go to the website, voteridevents.org, or just reformcalifornia.org and click under events, we're going to be up in your area. Let's see here. Marysville, Chico, and Redding on October 21st. So
Awesome.
come and meet me at one of those events. We're going to be distributing petitions, collecting signatures at the events, and doing a rally. And we need everybody off the couch and into the fight in order to get 1 million signatures, and hoping people will respond. I can't do this by myself. I'm a volunteer. But if all of us do our part, we can get this done, and we can create a political earthquake in California that will change the course of our state for decades to come.
Agreed. And we'll push that out too, and encourage people to show up. So let's talk about gerrymandering. So I think I'm always so grateful when there's people that have actually been in this fight for a while, because a lot of times when you have turnover, and we have had a lot of turnover in the state legislature, people don't remember. They don't have the institutional knowledge to know we've had this fight in California. The people didn't like the way that they were drawing lines, and they fought back, and we had propositions that changed that, and you were actually part of Prop 11. So why don't you talk to us about a little bit about that history and just what you think about what's happening with this new, apparently it's okay to gerrymander if somebody else gets caught doing it too.
Yeah, let me start out by saying I'm opposed to gerrymandering no
Yeah,
matter who does it. If a
exactly.
Republican does it or a Democrat, if it's for a blue state or a red state, it's wrong.
Yep.
Here's the very basic, simple concept. Politicians should not be choosing their voters. The voters should be choosing the politicians. Full stop. Gavin Newsom is a liar. He's dishonest. He's corrupt. He's a hypocrite. He wants to gerrymander. And when he says, oh, I'm for independent redistricting, he has never
Yeah.
supported independent redistricting. Remember, the voters put in place the Citizens Independent Redistricting Commission to put together nonpartisan districts for our elections. The politicians didn't do that. They opposed us in 2010 when we put the proposition on the ballot. And so the politicians have always been drooling and salivating over the notion that one day
Yep.
they're going to be able to undo this very populist reform. And this is their chance. Orange man bad. Donald Trump is a meanie. Oh, golly, by saying that, we can get through all sorts of corrupt, bad practices. So I'm hoping that we can educate even our Democrat neighbors that this is the wrong thing to do, that we shouldn't be ending the citizens initiative process that's been very successful for California. District lines should be based on equal population. They should be based on compact natural geography. They should be based on community ties, and they should be nonpartisan. Those are very simple concepts that we put into our Constitution. And then we said, hey, we don't trust the politicians to follow those concepts. We want randomly selected citizens on a commission to draw the maps. Again, if we allow Gavin Newsom's redistricting scheme to get approved, all of that ends. He says, oh, no, I'm for it. You're a liar, Gavin. This is all about ending independent citizen redistricting with nonpartisan goals. And what it will do is it will eliminate the concept of fair elections in our state. So I'm urging everybody, get off the couch, into the fight. As we're getting signatures for voter ID, which is about fair elections, the positive reform for fair elections, we're going to be stopping a negative attack on fair elections by winning the special election this November 4th. So a lot of stuff is going to happen in October, which is why we really need people to gear up and get out into the streets and help us fight.
So tell us a little bit about that process. So the state legislature is going to go with it. That's the consensus in Sacramento is that the Democrats are going to go with Newsom and they're going to put this on the ballot.
Oh, yes. Oh, they've been plotting this for months. They're going to come back as a state legislature on the 17th of August to introduce a bill, and they'll pass it by the 21st of August. Very quick, behind closed doors. And it'll call a special election at a cost of $250 million. And that election will be November 4th. The politicians will release a map that they drew behind closed doors to manipulate all the lines, and then they will get an amendment put on the ballot to the Constitution to end the citizens' redistricting maps for California. We need to get a no vote on their amendment, and I believe we can do it. The polling shows that they're barely at 50% with a misleading ballot title. But as you educate voters as to what the initiative actually does, the support plummets very quickly, even among Democrats. So we need every Republican to return a ballot voting no on Gavin Newsom's scheme. And then we need to engage our independent friends and a lot of our Democrat friends to educate them on why this would end fair elections in California and how they should vote no on principle.
Wow. Wow. So what are you looking for in an opposition party? And are you seeing people that are doing it well in Sacramento? Because obviously Bill Asaley was out there and that was really helpful, but now he actually gets to do all those things, as a US attorney, which is great. But for Sacramento, I mean, it's I ask people all the time, who do you think is leading the charge in Sacramento for the legislators? They don't even know anybody's names. I mean, they have no idea who's even there. And so number one, you coming in adds a name that people are familiar with. But even still, it's like getting the coverage. It would have to be you every day making the argument on the floor, which you do, and I appreciate it, but you can't do it by yourself. So are there other people that you feel are doing it well? You know, how are we going to build an opposition party?
Yeah.
Because God forbid this group ever did get power. I don't think that they would know what to do with it. So it's like we really do have to build a better army. And I'm not sure that we have those players right now, but what are you seeing?
So that's what prompted me to go inside the belly of the beast. I realized that unless we change the Republican Party, we're not really going to be able to rebalance California's political system. That one of the reasons why our political system is broken is that we have one party rule, and that's not going to end unless we actually have a second party willing to stand up on principle and fight.
Yeah.
And fight aggressive and fight without any sort of embarrassment. Just be true to your principles and really hustle hard. Sadly, for the last 20 years, the Republican Party of California, generally speaking, there are some exceptions, like Bill Asaley and Kevin Kiley and some others. The Republican Party has done one thing well and one thing only, and that is surrender. And I'm tired of the surrender caucus. I want an opposition caucus. I want a fighting caucus, and I also want more Republicans. So the recipe that we have is the following. Number one, we stand on principle and we offer bold solutions. We don't win by pretending to be Democrat. We don't win by being ashamed of what our ideas are. The Democrats have run this state into the ground, and we have better ideas. Let's be proud of that and offer those ideas. Second, we have to recruit candidates and demand our elected officials stand on principle, who are willing to fight every day aggressively, not just say, oh, I'm an assembly member and I'm here and so that's good enough. No, you have to use that seat to be an aggressive organizer, leader, and fighter. Use it to communicate. And so I tell people, as a member of the minority, I'm going to lose the vote. More often than not, I'm going to lose the vote. But I have an obligation to use my voice. My vote is one thing. My voice is, in many ways, much more important. And a lot of people in California feel voiceless. They don't hear anyone in the legislature speaking up for them. They just see bad ideas and no one giving a fight. So giving voice to the voiceless is important as an opposition party. And I told the Democrats, just a couple weeks ago on the floor, because they kept trying to shut me down, turn off my microphone, interrupt me. I said, look, I know you don't like what I have to say. And I know that it's kind of a jarring culture shock for you to actually have a Republican speaking up and giving you a different point of view. But it is my duty, my obligation to speak up and voice on behalf of my constituents. Now, my voice and their voice may not change your vote, but you have an obligation to at least hear me out, and then you can vote me down. But I'm not going to shut up and sit down. I have an obligation to give them a voice, and that's exactly what I'm here to do. Now, if you have enough people do that, sometimes the voice does influence the vote. And we've done that on some pieces of legislation already this cycle. But then third, once you go to Sacramento and you voice and you get defeated, take the case to the people. Don't worry about what's going on inside that building, because that building is only responding to public pressure. Create the public pressure. There's an old adage, politicians don't see the light until they feel the heat. Well, the grassroots need to light a fire so they feel the heat. And that's where I think the best thing we can do is be out in the streets, canvassing, putting initiatives on the ballot, organizing, neighbor telling neighbor, friend telling friend, mom telling daughter, father telling son. We got to get active. The grassroots are key. And then finally, I do have another bit of prescription, and that is we need to move away from the muddied interests in politics, because I think too many of our politicians are captured by the lobbyists and the special interests on both sides of the aisle, and they're dependent upon those big donors. I have a grassroots network of donors. In fact, it was important in my win for the state assembly seat, because when I ran, Democrats and Republican swamp creatures both united against me. They spent $3 million against me in my race, and we beat them handily by 20 points. And that's because we had small dollar donors that were willing to contribute $5, $10 at a time. And I think the more that the Republican Party gets real people, average Joe and Jane, to contribute and volunteer, the more independent the party will be, the more principled it will be, the more aggressive it will be. And I will tell you quite clearly, it is a corrupt system, and the only people that benefit are the special interests that fund that corrupt system. And if we want change, we need to bring in a different sort of resource base. And that resource base has to come from grassroots supporters.
Yeah, it has to come from the people. I mean, the fact is if you really want to change what representation looks like, you have to go talk to the people you represent. And unfortunately, you're funded at the state house. If you're running for state office, they're funded in Sacramento by all the lobbyists that get involved and pick a candidate, and they, largely get all their money from them. And so if you're running, for instance, in our first assembly, it's 11 counties. It's, over 25,000 miles of district, because of the lack of population. And so to actually get out there and to talk to everybody is a massive undertaking. But I say it all the time.
Mileage on the car, that's for sure.
Yes, I did have to replace my engine. But I think the issue is it is very hard to represent people you don't know. And if you can't get out there and talk to people and get that feedback, you'll believe what you're hearing in Sacramento. And a lot of times I hear very often from Republicans, well, you need to get along with the Democrats. Well, I get along with them. And it's like, well, who is that benefiting? You're keeping the status quo going. So are you seeing that the other people in the Republican Party in Sacramento are waking up to what you're saying? Are they taking your lead? Are they understanding that taking photo ops is not the job of a legislator, but actually, offering alternative legislation, stepping up and losing, but you're actually getting a message out, you're communicating, you're discussing the issues, you're forcing people to vote against good ideas. Like, are you seeing that the people that are there, that there is any kind of shift into listening and following what it is that you're prescribing?
So when I got up there, there was a lot of Okay, here he comes. And um, I'm very candid, I'm very direct, I'm very blunt, but I decided early on to be measured and, uh, uh, nudge to make sure that we got the ball rolling. And we've got some good fellow fighters that I supported last cycle. Obviously, Bill Asaley is no longer there, but for the first couple months, he was there. We got Letty Castillo and Leticia Castillo from Riverside and Jeff Gonzalez from Riverside. There's some rising stars in the Central Valley that I supported. Ali Macedo, David Tangipa, some really good new blood, new energy in the Republican caucus. And so we had this little group that said, "Hey, we want to fight. We want to fight." And it took, a case that we had to make. We had to, make the case to the other caucus members. But guess what? We've been making the case, and to their credit, caucus members have acted in a unanimous, united fashion. Every time I've asked that we fight, they've stepped up and fought. Doesn't mean it's been a quick decision, but we've gotten them to make that decision. And with wins, they're excited now because
Yeah.
we've had some key wins, like on the child trafficking bill, AB 379. We forced a vote on that bill. And the Democrats voted wrong, and then we put it to the people and put public pressure on the system, and within a week and a half, they reversed course. So they like winning, and it's really provided a lot more momentum for the side that I'm on, which is, hey, we should be more aggressive in fighting. But I'm looking to grow our Republican ranks by flipping Democrat seats to the red in the upcoming election. And that's why getting voter ID on the ballot is so important. I think it will really boost the turnout and enthusiasm of Republican voters statewide in 2026. And it's why I'm out there recruiting candidates and continuing to build out our movement.
Absolutely. Well, we appreciate it. That's for sure. It's on the outside when you're looking into what's happening in Sacramento, it kind of gets dwarfed a lot of times by just Newsom. And so you really don't know who the legislators are. You don't know who is largely responsible for the demise of California. I think it just gets a Newsom face, and people just don't understand that this is really driven by the legislature who's crafting these laws. And I think it's important that people start to turn their focus to that. I know you had ran for Congress. Obviously, your experience was in DC and you were familiar and you had worked there. And so you wanted to go to Congress. But I see this growing trend that people from California are kind of saying, okay, yes, federal obviously is important, but the state is lost. Like it's more and more difficult to live here, and they're taking more and more from those who actually contribute. They're just squeezing us dry. And so, what would you say to people that, sort of need to look again in California legislature? What are the places? I know Reform California is a great resource, especially when elections come up. But like, how can people be tuning into what's going on? Who's giving a good assessment of what's happening? When I was in Southern California, it was John and Ken that I listened to all the time, because with the recalls and stuff when that was going on. But who do you think are those voices? I know you are, and obviously you're on the inside too, but who are some of these voices that we could be listening to? Because if we don't tune into what's happening in California, we're going to continue to lose it. And I know that maybe you have somebody that's already elected in your own and they're an incumbent, but when we talk about these other races that people should care about, sometimes they don't really know how to engage or where to find out. So what do you think are some good resources? Obviously you.
At Reform California, we have a 5-point plan. And one of the 5 areas is new media. We believe that we can't take back our state until we break through the monopoly that the liberal media has, because they cover up for the Democrat politicians all the time.
All day.
And they don't tell the voters the truth.
Correct.
The wonderful thing is that, and I'm a former broadcaster, I was on radio for 8 years in Southern California. I used to get my ratings every week. We were number 1 in the market, 150,000 unique listeners on AM 600 Kogo in the San Diego market every week, drive time 3 to 6. 150,000 has now grown to 2 million a week now that I'm on YouTube.
Yeah.
These platforms.
Yeah.
So I have a show every day at 5:00 Reform California with Carl Demaio on YouTube. And we have over 200,000 subscribers, but it gets 2 million unique views on those videos every week. And we take a different, topic, but we get the breaking news every day at 5 o'clock, and we tell people what's going on. We also do our weekly newsletter. We have all sorts of other digital platforms that we get information out on. So people are now getting information here. And this is the great equalizer.
Yes, it is.
And when it comes to the Democrat versus Republicans. I heard yesterday that the New York Post will be opening up the California Post. That's welcomed. We also know that we have California Globe. So there are a few little outfits out here. But the reason why I'm doing your show, your podcast, is I want to support regional podcasters who can get information out. And it needs to be shared with your friends and family. That's how these influencers are able to build an audience and then get the information out to their audiences. So I think the Republican Party should be doing a whole lot more with the new media. And we're trying to help elected officials and candidates do that. But that's why I'm here today, because I support what you're doing. It's so crucial. You keep people informed, and both having statewide and regional sources of information, pretty crucial. So I'm hoping people will check out my podcast, Reform California with Carl Demaio, on YouTube, subscribe, and click the notification button.
Awesome. Really appreciate your time. Anything else or any other things that people should be alerted to? I know that there are some nasty bills right now. I think it's AB 495 that is just...
Oh, if we were to start talking about nasty bills, we'd be here for the rest of the
yes, we would. Yes, we would.
17 hours of nonstop podcasting. We cover some of the nasty bills every day at 5 o'clock so that people kind of know what's going on. There's not a whole lot of good to talk about in the legislature, sadly. Mainly, most of my time is spent trying to stop bad things from happening and calling the votes on the good things that they're trying to kill. So at least we have a recorded vote that we can go weaponize against them in the upcoming election. But I would encourage people to check out the website, reformcalifornia.org. We have a number of stories up there about bad bills. And of course, the podcast, we cover bad bills every day.
Awesome. Thank you for doing that. Thank you for going into the belly of the beast. We hope that you can continue to get more people doing that. And we'll do our best up here as well. But thank you. Thanks for what you're doing. We appreciate you.
Tenessa, thank you so much, and keep up the great work.
Thanks.